Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at Talking Heads. Addresses on driving licences, the vote for the Chief Minister, and the microchipping of dogs were all up for discussion this week. Here's Stu Peters with more.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
Should Manx driving licences feature the holder's address? There were questions over the removal of the information in Tynwald yesterday. Ramsey MHK Leonard Singer said his constituents had complained the document was no longer useful as a proof of address for those setting up utility accounts. Do you object to the address being removed from newly issued driving licences, or does it make little difference? Leonard Singer said that he'd been approached by various sort of financial institutions, I think, to say that it was a bad thing that people were using the driving licence as a proof of identity and address and all the rest. And Phil Gaughan said, well, this was signed off before I became minister by you and other members at the time. Yes, is it important, do you think, that a driving licence contains your home address? I guess an awful lot of people don't have a driving licence anyway, so do we need some other form of identification, or is that bureaucracy going mad where we've all got to carry photo ID with us? Stuart, greetings from Romania. Oh, are we on holiday? Are we away? Driving licence is an ID. Why not be 21st century and all citizens have to have a biometric chip implant with all personal information recorded and readable when needed, says Andy. Is that Big Brother looking over your shoulder, or is it just a security camera, Andy? We were talking about microchipping dogs the other day. I don't know whether or not microchipping people's a good idea. Don't kick up much of a fuss or it'll turn into another money spinner for the DOI, having to change your licence every time you change address, says Josh. Okay, well, I'm not saying anything about it. I don't know. But, I mean, there have been times that I've used my licence, certainly picking up parcels and things at the post office, sorting office, where they want some sort of an ID. And I'm just trying to think whether or not your passport's got your home address on it. I'm not sure that it has. So what would you use, I suppose, if you couldn't use your driving licence? Or is the fact that you photograph and your name is on it enough to identify you for the release of parcels and things like that? I don't know. Hi, Stu, on this rather dry subject of driving licences, the vast majority of us not giving a monkey's either way. It's once more disappointing that Mr Gaughan felt it necessary to try and make political points, i.e. act like a clever clogs, towards Mr Singer. It's hardly an issue that needs quite so much invective, surely. Oh, I don't know. If somebody asks you a question and they ought to know the answer to it because they were part of the move to the position that you're in now, I would have thought it would be hard to resist that, to be honest. The members of Tynwald, it would appear, need lessons in how to talk politely to each other. Additionally, Mr Horton in particular needs lessons of this type. That from our friend Mark. Thank you, Mark. Interesting subject about the deletion of the address from the driving licence, says Chris M. Curiosity got the better and I checked my passport and no address is mentioned on the document. In relation to proof of identity with regard to passport and driving licence photographs, it's the practice for some officials to endorse the photograph and or the supporting documentation. Perhaps proof of address could be proved in a similar way with some official form wherever endorsing the proof that the applicant is known to him to reside at the address stated. Just a thought, says Chris M. Well, yeah, but it's who you find. I mean, that's always a bit difficult, isn't it? Knowing the right person to actually sign the back of your photograph for a passport. I mean, I'm quite lucky in that I know a good few MHKs and people, but, if you just move to the island, for example, you might not know anybody that could countersign the back of your passport. And then where would you be? Well, stuck, frankly. Passports don't have your address on, confirmed somebody else. I wasn't sure, but when I thought about it, I thought, I don't think it does have an address on it. So you can't really use your passport as proof of address either. You can prove who you are, kind of thing. Most car hire companies won't hire a car unless there's an address on the licence. I can't imagine that they're going to turn anybody down. And from what Phil Gaughan was saying, this is a system that's used widely in other jurisdictions. I think, I don't know whether or not the UK you've got to have your address on, but an awful lot of people in the vicinity don't. So I'm sure that a car hire firm wouldn't turn you away if you've not got that as proof of address. Maybe you can prove your address in other ways if you're going to hire a car. I don't know. I mean, has anybody had any experience of being turned away by a car hire firm? Most requests for photo ID are to show who you are, that you are who you say you are and not where you live, says somebody else. Okay. No address on passports, only driving licence. My driving licence runs out in 2017. Okay, and what else? It's free to change your address on the licence. You can't change your address or any of the details held on your passport during the life of the passport. Only at renewal, says Cindy. Good. Let's go to the lines and see what Ken makes of this. Hello, Ken.
I seem to remember about a year ago when it was first muted, there was an article on Manx Radio and the civil servants poo-pooed the idea about the addresses getting removed.
Oh.
And it was pointed out to them that basically my daughter tried to open a student account and a driving licence was the only thing that the bank would accept as proof of where she lived because of bank of mum and dad.
Yeah.
She didn't have any utility bills.
No.
So that was the only address, and that was a saving grace. But of course, anybody students trying to do accounts now.
Well, yeah, but I mean, what about students who don't drive? And I assume that, there are a good few of them.
You go and get a provisional licence, don't you?
To prove your identity, or your address,
It's cheaper than a passport.
I mean, there must be an alternative to it. I don't know what it is, but there must be an alternative to it.
Well, whether it's this, glorified ID for, proving who we are and where you live, if it's for the ferries.
We're all going to end up being microtagged, aren't we?
I do worry, a bit short-sighted.
Yeah.
Yes, they do tend to try and score points in Tynwald, don't they, against each other?
Oh, yeah, well, that's politics. I mean, I think that our lot are fairly tame if you watch Westminster ever, House of Commons.
Or in South Africa where they were fighting.
Well, yeah, there you go, yeah, so it could be an awful lot worse. All right, Ken, so Ken thinks that we ought to have addresses on driving licences. This is interesting. Somebody says the new provisional driving licence has got no information on it to say that the licence is provisional. Is that true? That seems very strange. So if somebody's pulled up by the cops because they're doing over 50 miles an hour or whatever, and they're on, they wouldn't be on a provisional licence, would they? They'd be on a full licence by that stage. Or, if somebody's pulled up because the L plates have fallen off or whatever. So there's no way, if the cops look at the licence at the roadside, that they can see that they've got a provisional licence. Surely there must be something there that says that it's a provisional licence for certain groups. You'd have thought, but I don't know. So, John Cole, most European countries require residents to carry a separate identity card, so there's no need to have your address on your driving licence there. The Isle of Man government seems to have ignored that fact. Okay. I mean, it is coming across from people that this is some sort of a move by the government to get rid of this information, and I can't imagine that there's any benefit for them doing this. And if it's down to cost, if at the moment you can get your address changed free of charge, and that is adding to the number of people that need to be employed to do this, then, a modest charge of a couple of quid to cover the cost of doing it, you wouldn't have thought would be excessive. I don't know. At Berlin Airport, Rent-A-Car Sixt and Europcar insist on proof of address. I've been lucky to have my English paper copy with me, says somebody else. Okay. Car hire companies across use a credit reference agency to check you out, says Steve. Right, okay, well, that's one way to do it, I suppose. But yes, if, like me, you just moved, would they have fairly up-to-date details? It's a bit of a worry, this, I have to say. But whether or not having an address on a driving licence is enough to get rid of that worry, I don't know. The reason car hire firms insist on an address is to forward any parking or speeding fines. Yep, well, you would think it was perfectly reasonable that if you're renting somebody something worth 20,000 quid, you'd want to know that they'd proved where they lived anyway, apart from anything else. I got a new driving licence last month, and I've had better types of plastic card-free cornflakes packets. What a sham, pathetic. Isle of Man government should book up their ideas. Binoculars needed to see the information on it. Bobby's at night and not be able to read it without night vision microscopes. Great show, Stu. Good, I'm glad you're enjoying it. New R-plate licence is the same, no details, it's all on a computer, says one of our contributors. You can't hire cars in Germany without proof of address. Also, to use a cigarette or beer vending machine, you must first swipe your state-issued ID card before it will dispense. Yes, you must show us your identity card. Hey boy, sounds like another of Gorn's gaffes. Roll on September, says Frank. But you're in Ramsey, Frank. Leave things be, says somebody else. Ah, good, yes, the Manx response. Donald called the passport and driving licence have no address on them. That's why banks require you to have a utility bill along with your proof of identity. That's what's missing from your argument. Fair dues. I don't suppose everybody can have a utility bill, though, either. So it begs the question, really, should we have some sort of a national identity card that anybody can qualify for, and then it just does the job of all these things if needed. What else? All UK driving licences have your full name and address on them. It's an offence not to change your current address, which can result in a fine. That from Robert. Good. Thank you, Robert, for getting in touch.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
We're finding out more about this year's Christian Aid Week and just what the money raised here in the island will be used for. To tell us more about it, we're joined in the studio by the charity's coordinator for the Isle of Man, Louise Whiteleg. Good afternoon, Louise, and thanks for joining us on the programme today.
Afternoon, Stu. Pleasure as always.
Good stuff. What's this about bees, then?
Oh, bees. You've been picking up on the buzz. Have you?
Oh, yeah.
You see, I'm armed with lots of bee jokes.
Oh, right, okay. Oh, good. Oh, good.
This year's project is for Kenya.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is, it's called the Honey Hub project. We've been given a little area, well, I say little, it's 30 times the size of the Isle of Man, but realistically, a little area of Kenya where the Isle of Man Christian Aid funds will go to set up these honey hubs.
Right.
So it's a project of two halves. The first half being we're going to enable the farmers in the area to have honey as a sustainable source of income. So we're going to train them, make sure they know what they're doing. We're going to give them the equipment they need to do the beekeeping thing and support them with that side of things. But that's only half of the story, because what you do when you've got all these little farmers with all these bits of honey.
Yeah.
So this is where the hub comes into it.
Right.
So what we've done is we've set up a business hub, so everyone can bring their raw honey to a central point, and then we can centrifuge it and do what they do with honey.
It's a bit like a workers' cooperative type thing.
Yes,
then,
exactly.
It?
So then they've got a central source. We can put all the honey together, we can jar it, we can market it, we can make it look sellable, and then they can sell it throughout the rest of Kenya and share the profits back to the farmers.
And is there a great demand for honey in Kenya?
Well, at the moment, they import it. Something like 75% of the honey is imported from other countries into Kenya itself.
Okay.
But it's something they can do themselves. They just haven't had the ability or equipment to do it.
And so you're funding this, and obviously you're going to provide some sort of technical help as well, I would have imagined.
Yes.
Are we sending Manx bees out there? Because they might not like the weather.
I think it might be a bit chilly for them.
Yes.
It is interesting, actually. I've had some fascinating conversations because the Manx Beekeepers Federation are supporting us on this one. And I've had some fascinating conversations with them about all the different types of hives and the different types of honey. And things are done very, very differently over there. But the beauty of that is, because it's so new, we can teach them and give them information and advice to get it right first time, rather than going through a lumpy learning process.
This begs the question, I mean, if they're importing the majority of their honey already, is there a problem with actually creating honey, with actually beekeeping in this part of Kenya? Because, I mean, all I've ever heard about Africa and bees is killer bees.
Yes.
So I mean, you know, is it really difficult to keep bees there? Is the climate against it, or what?
No, the climate's perfect for it. In fact, talking to the Isle of Man beekeepers, the Kenyan bees can have a all year round bee collection, whereas our bees go to sleep when it's a bit too cold and horrible.
And is there lots of pollen for them to collect?
Yes, in the trees. It's not exactly what you imagine, is it?
No.
The area where we are is actually in Kenya is actually quite green, and there's lots of trees, and there's the Kenyan forest.
Yeah.
So the farmers will be on the edge of this forest and setting up the bees. The type of beehive that they use is a log beehive that they're using at the moment. But in order to extract the honey from that, you have to completely destroy the log beehive to get the honey, and then it exhausts the bees as they have to start from scratch. It all gets very complicated from this point in. But basically, if we can give them equipment, which means we move them away from the traditional log hives and into a more scientific way of
productive hives where you can actually lift the slats out, sort of thing.
Yes. So it'll take the productivity through the roof.
Okay.
from where they were originally.
And what's it going to cost to do this, though? And how much are you hoping to raise?
Wow. This is the beauty of living on the Isle of Man, that we are given a project, and that project is ours. But the offset of that is we're responsible for that. So the target for the Christian Aid Week project is £40,000
Wow.
this year. Yes, wow.
A lot of money for a few bees.
It's a huge amount of money, but the amount of people it's affecting,
Yeah.
the multiplier effect on every 50p, on every pound you stick on the envelope, the multiplier effect is massive. So the project will actually affect 50,000 people,
Yes.
real people. So, and that's just the start of it. And then when it starts to grow and establish itself, they'll be able to sustainably look after.
I'm guessing
their
that this isn't
futures.
one of those areas where they need wells and things like that, where it really is sort of destitute city. This is an area where you're just trying to create an income for people.
Yes, so they can sustain themselves.
Yes.
It's an area of deep poverty.
Oh, is it?
It's not exactly luxurious as you or I would imagine.
Yeah.
70% of Kenya still doesn't have a proper working toilet.
Right.
So these people are scratching a living and getting by. But what this can do, what this project can do, is help them to have a sustainable income, so then they can help themselves out of poverty.
So this is the teach a man to fish routine.
It is, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Good. And you're trying to raise money, and you're raising a lot of money to send bees to Kenya.
Yes,
Good.
in a roundabout fashion.
In a roundabout fashion, yeah. What was it that you did last year when we talked
It was the Marley Cook Stove project. Do you
Ah,
remember? I was
yeah.
running around the island with marshmallows, toasting marshmallows on this cook stove that we had delivered from Kenya.
Easier than a pocket full of bees, probably.
Yes,
Yeah.
it takes the sting out of it.
Oh, you really have got them all written down.
I've got my dad jokes right here.
Good stuff. We've got a text here. When I was on safari in the Masai Mara, name dropping as one does, we had Mara honey with our breakfast every day. It was the best I've ever tasted, made mostly from acacia flowers, we were told.
Oh, beautiful.
That from Mark.
Beautiful.
I don't know. Well, I don't know what acacia flowers taste like, but, interesting.
The Nation Station. Manx Radio.
Should compulsory microchipping for dogs be introduced to the Isle of Man? It's one of the recommendations by a Tynwald Select Committee set up to look into animal welfare in the island. Microchipping is one of a raft of recommendations to protect animals that will be discussed by politicians this week. If approved, legislation will be drawn up to enshrine those measures in law. It's in response to a petition for redress presented on Tynwald Day 2 years ago. Is compulsory microchipping for dogs in the island a good idea, or might it be difficult to enforce? Afternoon, Stu. I work part-time for Battersea Dogs and Cats Home. Any dog or cat was microchipped as a matter of course before sale. It helped to reunite lost, stolen animals with owners. It's also a little bit of peace of mind for the just-in-case moments and being a responsible owner. Yeah, I think on the face of it, it's a good idea. That was from Martin in Onken. Thank you, Martin. On the face of it, I'm not a pet owner, so I don't know what the pros and cons of it are, but it does seem to make sense, certainly. Let's go to the lines. We've got Sylvia on. Hello, Sylvia.
Yeah, we got a puppy in March,
Yeah.
and when he was going out for his 12-week jabs, we got him microchipped at the same time.
Right,
It
okay.
was only, $19.50. You've got peace of mind for life,
Yeah.
and your licence is a half price as well if you get them chipped.
Oh, right. So effectively, there's no real cost involved in it then, I
No,
wouldn't have
there's
thought.
not.
Yeah.
Over 2 years, you definitely get your money back, but
Yeah.
no, definitely the best thing to do.
Right. I get very confused about this. So we still have a dog licence, do we?
Yeah.
Right, okay. All right. So, I mean, it's an expensive job having dogs, isn't it? By the time you bought the food and all the rest of it and the licence and the jabs and the medical costs and things, it's not people sometimes think that it's a cheap hobby having a pet, but it's not, is it?
No, it's not. I would recommend people to get, them insured.
Yes.
Like to cover,
Yeah.
if they're involved in an accident and that, it'll cover the vet bills and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, because they can be horrendous as well.
Yeah,
Smash
they
it in.
can.
All right, Sylvia. Well, thank you very much indeed. Obviously, one of the more responsible pet owners. Hi, all doggies should be microchipped and DNA taken and put on a database as part of the licence fee. Yes. That way, if the dog's stolen or if it fouls, it can be traced via the DNA back to the owner. I agree entirely. I think that would be a great use of the technology. I expect that people who are less responsible would be up in arms about the very thought of that. I think that's a great idea, and we talked about that when we've talked about fouling in the past, and somebody sent me a link to a DNA thing where it's, because people have always said, oh, it's far too expensive that to trace a dog back via DNA, an owner via dog DNA. But apparently it's not, and it is quite doable for a reasonable amount of money, so some good prosecutions would more than pay for that. It's funny, we were talking about box sets last week on the programme, and I fell a victim to it. I kept seeing trailers on the telly over the weekend for a series that's available as a downloadable box set on Sky called Billions. Paul Giamatti, I think, is the actor, and he plays a state attorney, a United States attorney in America, and he's a real sort of upright lawman, and he's walking his dog, and he sees somebody else allow their dog to foul, absolutely insists that the guy cleans it up, and the guy doesn't realise who he is at first and said, "Nah, sorry, I forgot the bag," and then he realises that this is a very high-ranking lawman, effectively, and it's like, oh, right, okay then. And it made me think, maybe a bit more of that would be a good idea, but I think you'd be fairly brave to tell a dog owner that they need to be cleaning up after the pet, and, it's a case of not wanting to take the law into your own hands because it could go horribly wrong. But DNA tracing, I think it'd be a great idea, so thanks for that. A couple of good comments. Hi, I think chipping is a good thing, but a 24-hour dog warden's a waste of time and money. It's up to dog owners to look after their dogs, not government who say that they've got no money. That from Derek. Well, theoretically, the dog owners could be charged, couldn't they? So it could actually make money rather than cost money. I believe in the UK, the driver for chipping was simply the UK government trying to look like it's doing something about dangerous dogs. There's little point in it, really, as there's nobody controlling the system who scans them. Plus, the bad owners won't magically be turned into Barbara Woodhouse overnight by the insertion of a chip. In fact, it would make more sense if the owners were chipped. Controlling who sells and owns dogs is a far better idea. Good to hear the proposed Isle of Man system includes a register. While dogs sit in pounds, breeders shouldn't be allowed to carry on breeding them, especially the many who cynically treat dogs as cash cows, keeping them in poor condition without any care or love. Tighter control of breeding, a test and register for potential owners. Only then a chip makes sense, otherwise it's pointless. I quite like chips with hot dogs, though. And that's from Mick, who's listening via the net in Lincolnshire. Thank you very much for getting in touch with us. And one from Rob, which is about somebody watching the dog foul on the grass in Spring Valley, walked off without cleaning it up. Would have said something if I wasn't driving, says Rob. Well, you've got to be careful, I suppose, but it is disappointing, isn't it? It's awfully disappointing when you see things like that.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast, featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should the vote for the next Chief Minister be done as an open vote rather than a secret ballot? The process of voting will be slightly different from this autumn after Tynwald this week backed a motion by West Douglas MHK Chris Thomas. It means that from now on there'll be no secret ballot to elect the leader of the government, the Chief Minister. Instead, it'll be made clear which candidate each politician has voted for or whether they've spoilt their paper. The voting results of members of the House of Keys will also be read out before members of the Legislative Council cast their votes. Is it a positive step towards transparency, do you think, or could it stop some members voting honestly for who they think is the best candidate? It's stated that the vote of the Keys will be read out before the Legco vote. Will Legco members be privy to the vote of the Keys before they vote? It doesn't seem clear in the report, asks Derek. My understanding is that yes, Legco will be aware of how Keys has voted. I think that that's one of the benefits, as Chris Thomas sees it, in that, that they should then, he thinks, vote with the mood of the people who've been popularly elected. James Davis asks, words to the effect, why is everybody knocking the Legislative Council? I have to assume that was a purely rhetorical question, says Chris W. No, I think it's a reasonable question. It does. I mean, the Legislative Council's been there for a long time, maybe not 1,000 years, but it's been there for a long time. And it does seem to be coming increasingly under attack these days. So, no, I think it was a fair question. At last, a step in the right direction, says Josh. Step in the right direction to transparency. If we must have Legco, how about their secret ballot being abolished? Then they can prove that it's not an old boys club. Okay. Stu, if your boss was democratically elected, would you like him to know that you didn't vote for him, says David H. Well, I suppose that's the trouble with this, but, I think that the benefits kind of outweigh that. I don't think it's important how the Chief Minister is elected, but it is important that the role is that of a spokesperson for the government, as the power and responsibility should be with all the Keys members equally, as they're all elected to a parliament equally. We don't elect a party to be the government. Interesting thought. And party politics, of course, when you're talking about a chief minister. I've got another one. What a load of rubbish. What the people want is a publicly elected chief minister. Chris Thomas is living in La La Land if he thinks that it'll make any difference. More money and time wasting by MHK, says Dave. I don't know, Dave. And the fact is that with our current system, we couldn't really have a publicly elected chief minister. Not easily, anyway. See, in the UK, when you vote either Labour or Conservative. Most people don't, or Liberals or whatever. And I don't think that most people know the names of their candidates as such. They just vote for the political party, because what they're doing is that they're actually voting for who they want the government to be, Labour or Social Democrats or Conservatives or whoever. And so, it's a whole different system. It's party politics in the UK, and we don't have that in the Isle of Man. You are voting for individuals rather than for a political party. And that's very true about a chief minister as well. The chief minister would be the leader of the party that had won the most votes, wouldn't it? So it'd require a complete sea change to Manx politics for that to work, unless there was a list of people who, again, at the general election in September, people who were prepared to stand for Chief Minister, who had aspirations to the top job. Maybe on the ballot papers there was a little asterisk or something next to the thing to say this person has put themselves forward to be Chief Minister, so only tick this box if you're happy for that to happen, kind of thing. So maybe there are ways to do it, I don't know. A text in here, Manx government transparent, don't make me laugh. Now, you see, a healthy dose of cynicism, I think, I'm probably guilty of that myself, and that's all right. But the fact of the matter is that we've got an MHK here who's trying to make things more transparent, and you're having a pop at him, effectively, for trying to do that. Let our glass be half full today, because the system that's been there for a long time, that people have said is not a particularly good system, has been changed. So, let's be happy about that. Let's consider this a move towards transparency. I'm strongly opposed to Chris Thomas's view that LegCo members should simply rubber stamp whoever leads in the Keys vote for Chief Minister. I believe it's the responsibility for each member, whether Keys or LegCo, to vote for whoever they truly believe will best lead the Isle of Man. Any other course of action is unacceptable, says Stuart. LegCo might well feel the same way, and they may not choose to rubber stamp who the Keys have decided should be Chief Minister. It's entirely up to them when the time comes. It'll be an interesting election, I would imagine, to see how the new system actually works in practice. Stu, I think Chris Thomas's motion should have gone further, to have elections for MLC members transparent as well. Then constituents could see which MHKs were playing games, says Les. Yeah, well, I kind of think that with Manx politics, making wholesale changes is quite difficult, but doing things a little bit at a time seems to be the way forward. What's the old saying? By the inch it's a cinch, by the yard it's hard. And I kind of wonder whether or not this is Chris Thomas's play on this, is to do these things on an incremental basis. And if this works, if this seems to everybody to be a better system in September, October time, then maybe that'll be the time to say, well, listen, we all agree that this is a better way of doing it. Why don't we do it for MLCs as well? And it may happen. Who knows? I heard a bit on the radio yesterday, and I can't remember which point of the day it was, but apparently when Dudley Butt retired from the Legislative Council, he thanked the 20 members who'd said that they'd voted for him, and the 16 of them who actually had. I thought that was... yes, I can imagine that's the thing about a secret ballot, that you never know, do you, who's actually voted for you, because if you're successful, everybody will want to be on your side. Ken Corley said, would the vote mean that the Legislative Council could overrule the Keys votes if they didn't agree? I don't think so in terms of numbers, no. And does the Chief Minister have to be a member of the House of Keys? I think in terms of custom and practice, that's the way that it is. But when Richard Corkill resigned and Donald Gelling came back as sort of Chief Minister, I think he was an MLC at the time. So I think that there are different ways that these things can happen. It's all a little bit complicated. Catherine's just been explaining it to me. I was listening to Chris Rea, and I'm not sure that I've got the full hang of it. But yes, that will become clearer over the next few days, I think.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should any redevelopment of Douglas Promenade allow for the horse tram line to be extended to the sea terminal in future, even if the work carried out now doesn't actually include the laying of the tracks? It's something the Friends of Douglas Bay Horse Tramway would like to see happen, and they're calling for a horse tram corridor to be included in any development. The group has been looking into legislation relating to the historic tramway and has uncovered a range of statutes and guidance which appear to grant the carriageway a level of protection. Should any redevelopment leave the door open for the tram lines to be reinstated at some point in the future, or should an extension be ruled out completely? Dear Stu, I hope this helps, but who was here first, cars or horse trams? Horse trams. Also, that's our heritage that they're playing with. I'm certain somehow, in a rightful and proper and polite manner and way, there can be a good resolving answer to safely and satisfactorily allay any fears and worries and keep the horse trams running full length at Douglas Bay's promenades. Cheers and thanks. All the best from Sammy Tier in Douglas. Thanks, Sammy. Stu, fit the tram lines, even if they're not used on a daily basis, they could then be used in the future by the MER connecting visitors to the network straight off the boat, says John. Stu, the promotion of tourism as a means of growing our economy is essential, and our heritage transport system, including the horse trams, are an important component towards that goal. The horse trams are the only existing original system in the world. It would be a gross dereliction of duty by our government to close them down. Regards from Neil. Anyone listening to all this in the UK about this horse tram thing must be having a good laugh. How long will it go on for? The roadway's a joke, and the people who are paid big bucks to make decisions are a joke. Just get on with it, please. That from KB. Stu, can everyone please sign up to the proposals currently on the table rather than throwing spanners into the works to delay matters further? The most pressing issue is getting the work underway to refurbish the roadway as soon as possible. What happens to the tram tracks is of secondary importance. That's according to David, a different David. Hi, Stu. Everybody seems to be missing the main point on the horse trams. There's a serious risk on health and safety grounds, as identified by the inspector, says Alistair. Well, it depends on which inspector you talk, which health and safety expert, which inspector, which consultant you talk to. You know, everybody seems to be singing from a completely different hymn sheet. How many times do we need disruption on the prom? Get it all done at the one time and take the horse tram to the sea terminal, says Hazel. OK. Douglas Promenade was designed mostly as a tourist amenity and not a main arterial road, says Simon. Oh, well, that's put me in my place. Well, yes, it was. It was designed as a tourist amenity when we had hundreds of thousands of promenaders coming over and using it in the summer. We also used to have deck chairs on the beach. But there's no demand for them either, so they're not there anymore. Yes, I mean, Douglas Promenade was a fantastic tourist amenity, but we had tourists then rather than the handful that we've got now. And I'm not downplaying the importance of our tourism industry, but we don't have hundreds of thousands of people wanting to walk up and down the promenade that we did, you know, even 50 years ago. Times change, but we don't seem to want to. Where do these people think all these visitors are going to come from? It's too flipping expensive to get here, says Dave. Stu, I'm sick of hearing about the horse trams. Get rid of them altogether, because I bet all those who just wanted to keep them going don't use them or haven't used them since the rescue. And tell the government or DOI to just resurface the thing. It's embarrassing when the island gets visitors, for example, during TT. That from Kevin, who's not a happy man, he says. Stu, I don't really care one way or the other what they do with the horse trams, but for flip's sake, come on, government, start at the beginning of the job and decide, are the trams staying? Then draw the plans for what they decide. Anyone would think we had money burning holes in our pockets, the amount of plans they've had, but with no idea where we're going and how to get there, says Sean. But let's go to the lines. We're talking about horse trams, and John's on. Hello, John.
All this business of the horse trams and where to put them and all is becoming a complete farce. They either want to get rid of them altogether or leave them where they are, because if you've got something that's heritage, if you move it, you've lost the heritage, no matter where you put it.
Right, okay.
And, you know, it's just ridiculous. They're not doing any harm. The traffic can cope with them. It's not as if they're in the middle of the M6 or something. And, you know, they have to move things. I never can understand why they moved the Victoria clock sideways, because now you've got two lanes coming down Victoria Street. One's turning left, one's turning right.
Yeah.
Why couldn't they leave the clock where it is, left of the clock to go left on the prom, right of the clock to go right on the prom.
That would have been
all
cheaper.
that expense?
I mean, the only thing that I would take issue there is the fact that, the horse trams were part of our transport network, weren't they, when they were first designed?
Yeah.
Carrying tens of thousands of people a week on them. And that's why we needed 2 tram tracks down the middle of the road, because most vehicles at that time were horse-drawn anyway, so they weren't out of place. Nowadays, 100 and odd years later, they're completely out of place. They don't have the traffic on them to require 2
I
lanes.
don't agree with you. I think
right.
for the amount of traffic we've got, I mean, all right, at night when what we call the rush hour and the morning rush hour, have no horse trams running then. But during the middle of the day, they're not a problem, because if you're held up for sort of 3 or 4 minutes because of traffic on them, what are you going to do with that 3 or 4 minutes?
Sure, yeah. I mean, there are other comments, though, about whether or not it's safe to disgorge or to board passengers in the middle of a fairly busy road.
Because the conductor gets off, and they used to anyway, get off and stop the traffic going past.
Yeah.
Quite simple.
All right.
And it's... I just don't... It's becoming a total farce, the whole thing.
Well, it is, yeah, absolutely. All right, John, thank you very much indeed for your call. What else have we got? The DD's current tourist initiative is designed to attract new visitors by promoting specialist tourist packages, whether they be heritage, history, internment camp, sport, Celtic festivals, etc. But so far, we haven't been promoting them as well as we could. As Richard Ronan said, the Isle of Man doesn't tell the world about what we have other than the TT. Horse trams are part of the overall vintage railway package, so they play a significant part of that. Thanks again. That's from Pauline and Steve. As a visitor, I love the horse-drawn trams. They're a big attraction, a unique, different feature. So many places are updated and ruined. My hometown has been. The nostalgic harking back to an earlier, better time. Fun but useful live attraction elements are great, and they sit so well with the electric and steam railways. They should be seen as an asset. Yes, I agree. A rail alongside the prom footpath would be ideal. In Cleethorpes, near my home, they have a light railway running along part of the seafront. It's separated from the footpath by a simple fence and is a very popular and safe attraction. The stops at either end used to create extra interest with cafes and shops. Removing them from Douglas would be a mistake. That's from Mick in Grimsby. Thanks for getting in touch, Mick. Stu, if all these people are going to use the horse trams, why did they not make a profit but ended up with a debt, asks Katie. Well, people tell me that it's not one of those things that needs to make a profit. It's an important part of our heritage, and I'm prepared to accept that. Patrick called, there really are only 2 options. Either get rid of them altogether or resurrect the roadway base and put them back where they were. The idea of having them go halfway along the prom is a fallacy. People would have to get halfway down the promenade to use them. It's a nonsense. There are only 2 options. Pick one and get on with it. Stu, it's not simply the horse tram versus how many promenaders use it. Oh, here we go. The whole point is the horse trams are part of the Isle of Man attraction for visitors. Coachloads of visitors come over here this week and used and appreciated the horse trams. I live here and I spoke to them while I used the horse trams as well. They really appreciate the fact that they were there, which for them was part of the appeal of the island. Sorry, but we don't need your bias, says Jen. Well, it's just my opinion. It's not a bias, Jen. Stu, I agree. The tramway could be better placed at the roadside of the promenade, Blackpool style, leaving plenty of room for pedestrians, says John. Bored with the horse trams, only excuse to do nothing with the prom for the last 10 years. It's a disgrace. Can't wait for Gorn to be voted out. OK, the Ramsey Pier is flat. Refurbish the pier and stick them out there instead of the mini train, killing 2 birds with 1 stone that way. Stick them anywhere as long as they're not in my way, says Paul, frustrated road tax paying motorist. Oh dear. From the toll gates to the junction at Port Sodrick, it is relatively flat, says Charles. I've just used the ordnance map to calculate the difference in height along its length, and it's only 1.2 metres. OK, I stand corrected. I didn't think it was that flat, but thank you very much for that. About 6,000 people in the petition to keep them. They cost £400,000 a year to run, so if these people want them that much, why don't they pay £66 each per year to keep them running? Let's see how much they want them when they have to pay, says Rick.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. Our thanks to everyone who contributed to the programme this week. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion yourself, you can call, text or email between midday and 2 p.m. on weekdays, or you can share your thoughts at any time on the Facebook page. That's Talking Heads with Stu Peters. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com, and the website's also where you'll find an update of what's being discussed on the programme each day. You can also keep up to date with that information by liking the Facebook page or following Stu Manx on Twitter. And if there's anything you think we should feature on the programme, let us know by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com. Love being Shaw. Terms and conditions apply.